So this Gompa, June the 30th, 2024. I always have to stop and think and make sure I don't get the year wrong or the month or whatever. Here we are in June 2024, and we're discussing ritual and especially group ritual, but uh ritual to begin with. Ritual is core to tantric practice, comes into all aspects, many, many aspects of Vajrayana, not all aspects, but many aspects. And what's to say about that? It has different functions in different places, but you can generalize those functions. Very common and well-known tantric rituals are the preliminaries. Those all usually have the function of experiencing emptiness. So I thought we would start by getting a feel for where you're at with regards to ritual. When I say the word ritual, what does that mean to you? Plasma, why don't you start us off?
Sure. So I guess it's something that is uh scripted in such a way to maximize the sense of shared experience among a group of people and really trying to be like profound. So something that's like powerful and capable of cutting through a lot of kind of noise about how people relate to each other in a group setting and how they relate to like is like bigger picture meanings of the group that that they're constituting. Uh, yeah, and I have no experience with it. So that's all completely theoretical. That's all just gleaned from like reading about it.
Is that something
Uh,
you would want? Is it something you've looked for and would want, or not
I
particularly?
cautiously, yes, I think it would be very good for. I mean, I say cautiously because I think there have been times when I've sort of been participating in rituals like not in a way that feels not entirely voluntarily. Right. Or like maybe I would give the example of like Pledge of Allegiance in grade school. That's pretty uncomfortable. But if I were able to fully step into it, if I felt that confidence that I actually have the right shared values with the group and so on, then I could see it being very powerful. Yeah, in a good way. Like something I would want, something I would really want.
Mm, mm. Let's hear from some others. Evan, have you experienced ritual?
Experience ritual growing up in uh, my conservative Christian upbringing. So I think that has instilled some skepticism of ritual in a setting where, like Plasma mentioned, in a setting where I don't necessarily have the shared values. It seems like it can easily be used as a tool for conformity and kind of getting in line with things that I might not necessarily agree with. So, but that, I mean, I think that is just from my history. But much as Plasma said, like I could see very much see the value of it in the context where I do have deeply shared core values, and that shared energy of ritual could be very powerful. I could see that being the case. But I just, yeah, there's a right now I just have this tendency to be a little weary of ritual.
And
Yeah,
and do you feel that that is coming from your early experience,
I think so. Yeah, yeah,
being forced into ritual that you didn't enjoy, or what?
yeah. It wasn't really forced into. It was just a discomfort with the group conformity that I wasn't exactly sure I wanted to be conforming to. So that it wasn't like overtly negative or like no one was forcing me to do something that overtly forcing me to do something that I didn't want to do. It just felt like, what's going on here, right? I didn't, and being younger, I hadn't kind of established a sense of my own values and stuff like that. But there was always kind of that tension of in a group setting where, yeah,
And being older and you look back on that, do you have a sense of what it was going on here?
not particularly. I think it's just maybe the my disagreements with that whole conservative Christian view and outlook,
Mm.
looking back on that now. Um, and so it's, I think, just a strong disagreement with those values, looking back on it now.
Right,
Um,
right. So,
yeah,
so what I'm hearing is that you're seeing it in terms of religious ideological values, and that there were these rituals and they came about because of these religious values or ideological values, and there was some kind of question there around, well, what's going on here? I think that was the question.
yeah, yeah, basically that,
Um,
yeah. And
yeah,
yeah, there was no, I think in that time, what would have been most helpful for me is holding open a space of questioning what was going on, and the rituals around it were those religious rituals were a way of kind of subtly or not so subtly shutting down questioning.
right, right. Anyone else have some experience to bring? What's your relationship with ritual? What does it mean to you?
I somewhat can resonate with Evan's take there in the earlier religious settings. Go was born and raised sort of in the Catholic Church side of things, but we were on again, off again Catholics, so it wasn't overly oppressive. It was something that we sort of didn't do every week. We didn't go to mass every week. But my relationship to a formal religious structure in that respect, I think that's part of the reason why I'm attracted to all of the accoutrements of the Vajrayana type system, where you can have an altar and you can play around with um, different Vajraphernalia and things like that. And I think there's stuff there that is has value in terms of context, play, and then there's also another interesting part there that ties into magical thinking, which I like playing around with as well. So there's a whole lot there to unpack. Really, I haven't really, and then you can pair that all the way back to say a ritual of when you get to work, do you go and make a cup of coffee and sit down, or if you've got workmates, you go and talk to them. Um, what informal rituals do you have as well? So it can go from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Hmm. So you're seeing ritual as something that is there in life, and that there's a spectrum from formal to informal, conscious to not so conscious, just automatic, and that there's a whole you're looking at it in that way. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're making an informal offering to the local spirits, then you could be feeding your compost heap. So there's lots of little different ways of looking at these things.
And I'm picking up that you have an attraction to ritual. There's something that is appealing there, that there's all this stuff to unpack. There's loads of ways to relate. that it's potent in your life. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's a way of being in the world where you can interact with the world in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
I was thinking about the relationship of the individual and the collective, that that ritual is based on some sort of, well, group ritual is based on some sort of relationship. And um, Lulu mentioned her sense of personal autonomy, and Evan brought it up. And everyone's mentioned it, that if I don't have, if I don't feel free to dip in and dip out, I was thinking, if I don't feel free to say, oh, that was bullshit. I'm not doing that again. If the social pressure doesn't allow me to come in and go out, then I don't want to be part of that group. And then when Gray was talking about, he was referring to some personal rituals rather than group rituals. And for Gray, it's play and magic and things he enjoys, and something that brings some sparkle into his life. I was thinking about social rituals. I used to play soccer on Sundays, and then a bunch of us would go out and drink beer and talk about goals that we scored 10 years ago, or a soccer match that that was on or something. It was very much a social ritual of warm feelings with people I care about, and renewing our the bond over the thing that we enjoy together. And then I thought about empowerments at the Buddhist center across the road. We'd be told to be there at 1 p.m. and then the head mucky muck would be in there. We'd be standing around waiting till 1:45 while he was doing his thing and creating the mandala and embodying the deity that we were like, oh, dude, your my time isn't worth shit. Your time is really special. Like, oh, but there's no way to say that. I mean, because it's so holy. You can't say, dude, come on, my time's just, I'm the deity too. Anyway. So, um, and it moved my meter like this much. It was like, okay, it was nice. It's probably better than watching TV, but it it wasn't a mystical experience.
You ever had a group religious or spiritual ritual experience that really did move you a lot?
Yet,
Yeah,
yet. That's Russian for no.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think so. I think I'm much more oriented toward my own personal meaning making and experience and revelation.
Mm, mm,
So that's much more important to me.
mm. And within that personal experience, does ritual play a part there, or is it's just, yeah, not particularly relevant to that meaning making or more insight kind of experience that that you're familiar with?
Yeah, I can't, yeah, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, social ritual has been valuable to me in this kind of open-hearted way.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
that's when I think of the things that I valued the most, the more social rituals, where let's see, where the value is in social connection, inclusiveness.
Mm, mm. It's interesting because I think often in a group religious context, so I think of, like, for example, my mom and her involvement with her local church and that sort of thing. It's at the same time fulfilling a social function, very much so. And then there you can see all these multiple functions together. And for some, it, the social function becomes the glue, the
Primary,
thing.
yeah.
And you can have the social ritual without the religious aspect, like the football meetup or whatever. Yeah. So I'm thinking of all of these different functions that come together or could be disentangled. And then your example of the center where you go and there's just, it's almost like pure ritual, nothing else. There's not the social thing coming into it at all. It's like an example of the extreme up the other end.
And it was holy.
Holy, yeah, very holy. And it also, from your description, it sounds like something was lost there, like in a different context, a different time, that may have had some very different meaning and relevance that, for you at least, and maybe for others there, there's something that had been lost there.
Yeah, the design certainly is to transport um, participants into another realm, another view, another
Mm,
another mandala, another reality.
right.
That's the design of it.
Yeah. And that didn't work, did it?
Write it for someone else.
Maybe, yeah, yeah, not for you. Anyone else?
Feel like I have some stuff to share. I mean, this is a pretty interesting conversation. Um, my experience, I've had several different experiences in like spiritual religious settings. I think like the first one that I think of that was like that stands out was ayahuasca ceremonies. And there's a lot of stuff around there. Like they'll do like this bath thing with like flowers, and you're supposed to like put the water on yourself, and you just kind of watch what other people do, and then you do the same thing. So I remember doing that, and so oh, this is kind of weird because I've never done something like this before, and like the rational skeptical part of me is like, what is this about? Like this doesn't make sense to me. They also do like they'll use like sage and stuff like that, and like smoke you out. Um, and then at the end, like over the weekend, like after we're done with the ceremonies and everybody's like purged, what you do is they have this one big purge bucket and they dump it into the ground and bury it. So it's like this, it's supposed to be this meaning of like taking like what no longer serves you and kind of burying it. So I totally understand like the skepticism that people feel. Like I felt that too. But I think over time, I've come around to kind of appreciate ritual more. Some other context of how I've seen it done. I spent 10 days in a monastery, at a Zen monastery, and there was this less elaborate, I guess, less like a big thing as in the ayahuasca ceremony, but just kind of folding the utensils and the bowl, like the way that they would do that, very like methodical. And I think a lot of that was used to direct our attention in a specific way and to help cultivate mindfulness. Um, so, and then my kind of understanding how ritual works is it kind of amplifies meaning, the sense of meaning. And and I can see how this can be a problem if you're being kind of indoctrinated into a potential meaning or that's not helpful, which often happens in shared settings. And then, another one that was recent was I did a 6-day retreat at this Buddhist temple, and I really didn't resonate with it. Was like a very renunciate kind of teaching that they were giving. And they had a lot of like singing and bowing and stuff before the meditation, um, which I don't have no connection to that tradition or to the teachings that they were having. So to me, it was kind of weird, but I can see how that singing, like just listening to some of the words and stuff, like I can see how it would open up some devotion. So there's this devotional aspect of like increasing meaning and connecting to a practice or to a sense of shared meaning in a community that's there. And yeah, I think there has to be a fit. Like if there's a sense of connection to the community and you resonate what's there, then the ritual makes sense and you kind of buy into it and can use it to um, amplify your sense of devotion to a practice. So there's kind of it's like a double-edged sword there.
I'm really picking up on that phrase, buy into it. We had a discussion on ritual in the Vajra retreat last year. Was it last year? I think so. And the conversation came to center around the idea and the experience of buy-in, and how to what extent you buy in. I mean, it's a very provocative, evocative phrase. It's got all sorts of connotations to it, but there's something about that willingness to step into a ritual, and what makes that available or not available, and how does that play out. So I'm really glad you brought that phrase out. Yeah.
Yeah, like in hearing you too, this is the other thing that I was thinking about is there is a sense of some kind of surrender, or like like letting go of the rational part. I think how ritual works too is there's some kind of a symbolism there. So
Mm.
it kind of works in an unconscious way. So there has to be a willingness to kind of like put the rational defensive part of the mind kind of aside. And when we come into a setting and we don't trust the setting, it's like, well, I'm not gonna allow that part of myself to relax because I don't really know what's going on here.
Mm. Mm. So are you saying that to allow that part of yourself to relax, you'd be more likely to do that if you understood what was going on, what was expected, what it was about, what the shared meaning was supposed to be, what the ideological context was, or whatever. Like, if there is a familiarity there, then you're more likely to allow that skeptical side of yourself to relax. Have I got that right?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm thinking there are a couple of ways that we could take this conversation. One is simply to take a look at what are all the different group Vajrayana tantric rituals. There are certain ones that are um, core tantric practices for groups, like Sok, the feast practice, or Wang, the empowerment ceremony, or lots of different ones. I'm also enjoying very much this sharing of personal experience and relationship with ritual. We have some people here who have been at Evolving Ground group rituals, right? Anyone want to say something about your experience in the Evolving Ground context? Maybe that's a good way to take it for now.
I could say something about the sock ritual that we did. Um, the thing that I really enjoyed about it and felt like I could step into it was we created it together as a group. We like decided what we wanted to do and how we wanted to approach it and what it meant to us. And so we really were a part of the creation of the whole ritual. So then I had a real understanding of what we were doing. And so it was easy to step into that. And it was super impactful. Um, I felt very moved and connected to everyone in that sock ritual. We all brought ourselves there. It was very beautiful, and I was nervous about doing it, but I did it.
Can you say something more about what the challenge was for you?
For me, it was I really wanted to share. We were supposed to share something that we wrote. It was hard. I kept rewriting it and trying to figure out how I'm going to say it, and I just wanted it to be something that really came from me, that I could share with everyone.
An
'Cause,
offering.
yeah,
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
offering.
There's an aspect of, just for some context here for everybody, in the Sok, which is a shared feast. It is centrally an offering as well, and it's your offering for the benefit of everyone everywhere. There's this offering aspect to it, and so as a part of the structure that we brought. Each person brought, we started off all outside, and everybody brought something from the outside into the setting. We gradually moved in together to be in the room together. And then there was a part of the, tell me if I've remembered this correctly. I think there was a part where there were 15 of us, and each person had an element and a kaya. So there were the 5 elements and the 3 kayas, and then they offered something in respect to each, to the one that they were representing, and then brought that to the group. And there was this sense of stepping into a structure and following the script and following the structure, right? And we drew, in the creation of it, we drew on the structure of a traditional sock feast and looked at, well, what are the important aspects of that in terms of the principle? How does it work? What is it supposed to bring about? How does it function? Yeah.
Yes. And then the easy part was when I got to give everyone their food, and I was the dakini, and I got to dance around, and that was like so easy and so fun. That was the playful part.
Reflecting on it, there's all these sections in this ritual, and each one of them kind of has a very specific meaning and background and connection, and lineages do it differently, and the way that we spent like 4 days in a row working for an hour and a half or more each day, going through each of those sections, and then as a group deciding how it would look to step into the function and the principles of each of those things, but do it in a way that was true to where we're coming from. There's something that I really remember well, which was we were talking about how a big part of or a part of the ritual is about working with transgression. And it became very obvious that in a traditional context, what was transgressive for all of us in the ritual itself, coming from a Western contemporary perspective, those things weren't transgressive at all. So we had to make some alterations and make it alive again. And so it was an interesting thing of both like doing something very different, but in the service and respect to the way that the ritual actually works and where it came from, which was really pleasant. It worked really well too, I think. It was the first ritual, I guess to put some context, specifically formal spiritual ritual that I had ever experienced, being able to buy in and kind of surrender to it and just show up, which was really a big thing because I'd maybe been in more secular type thing like the Pledge Allegiance stuff, or visited a church and took commune or something, and always kind of felt like an outsider, and very similar to a lot of other people here, you both feeling a lot of skepticism and not really not a lot of familiarity with people, and kind of easily wanting to make sure that I was maintaining my personal autonomy. And so I was really kind of a little nervous to see, could I actually drop that? And it was really a big surprise to see that that group context worked for me, made it available for me to step into it, which was really great.
It was interesting how during that discussion about transgression, it came about that quite a number of people in the group, for them, being engaged in a group ritual felt more transgressive than many of the original cultural transgressions that would have given rise to the sock practice. That was kind of a nice meta irony there.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's a few times we're like, all right, let's do it the traditional way because man, that would be really radical because that
Yeah.
is not something that I'm normally accepting of. So
We had a whole section of that was very traditional indeed, with the chut drums and the mantra recitation, and that it was interesting because it was a part of the structure, but not the whole structure. And because it was in that context, people were able to just step straight into it and really have a pretty powerful experience. We had some, like it was a lot of instruments and drumming and, highly repetitive mantra, Doji Purba mantra we did. So the sok ritual is a joyous ritual. It's very joyful. The whole it's very colorful. There are group rituals that have very different flavors or aesthetics. And one of the things that we've talked about in Evolving Ground in engaging with rituals is what is the aesthetic and what does that communicate? Sometimes there's just a natural affinity to one kind of aesthetic or another sort of aesthetic. Art, I'm reminded of you talking about the very simple, minimalist, clean, plain aesthetic. I'm guessing in the monastery that was a Zen monastery, was it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And that aesthetic is connected to the nature of the function of the ritual. That is always the case. The Tibetan sok ritual, there's a lot of color, there's a lot of sound, there's all this elaborate food, there's lots of stuff going on. And that is connected to the joyous, like everyone, everywhere. This is going out into the world. It's a connection with that. And then there are wrathful rituals that are intense and have a heightened emotional or heightened sensation. A lot of that kind of ritual in the wrathful.
This is Alta. I was going to say something. I just want to apologize for being off camera. My internet is very unreliable. I'm trying to get used to it. I've moved recently and it's a little, anyway, it's not reliable. I wouldn't say I'm having a struggle with the word ritual, but I think, and I'm thinking about being part of the Chud practice. See, I even use the word practice as opposed to ritual, and because ritual tends to imply to me that something has gone on a long time. I mean, and obviously the Chud ritual has gone on a long time, but I haven't connected to its antecedents, to its legacies. It's not my culture, you know. And so I had such a sense of the ceremony, and it was powerful and continues to resonate in my life and work. And in that, I don't know how, I mean, something about this, the ritual thing. I mean, I was struck by what Jarrett was just saying about the transgressive nature of even being part of ritual. I thought, oh, I can relate to that a little differently. I mean, that I am deeply steeped in what I call African American or Black American religious theater, and I absolutely love it. I mean, the Black church is culturally, um, it nourishes me. I I don't believe a word of it. I mean that it has nothing to do with the ideology, the ideas of it, the belief systems, but the aesthetic and culture and music and even and I think of it as theater because there is always an arc of um, following a line of here we are in our isolated ways of being, and we've been in the world, and it's such a struggle, and we're connecting together through music and prayer. And then as we do this, there's a grieving, and then at some point there's a kind of ecstatic turn, and in that turn, oh, we're now connected not only to each other but to ourselves and whatever divinity. and through that empowered to re-enter the world reborn. I mean, essentially that's the arc, and the arc's always the same. So there's something comforting about the repetition, even as I stand outside of believing it.
Mm.
Um, and it makes me think about, I have a really good friend, and one of our friendship rituals, I don't know how we'll do it now that I'm no longer living in New York, but we try to go and see every production of Hamlet. It's just something we really dig. We're both writers, we're poets, whatever. We were there, we got to see Ralph Fiennes and the one that he won the Tony for. It's just, and three of us, three fully grown women writers who have known this story since whenever, certainly college, maybe high school, and where they're like, oh, please don't do that. Oh, please, we want everyone to live. Which isn't the way the story goes. And the story is always going to be the same story. Um, and yet that ritual in the last one production I got to see, which was really interesting, you know, wonderful theater. And there were people older than me, I think, a lot. I mean, I'm 70, but there were people who at the end didn't get out of their seats. They were weeping so hard. What is that draws us back to stories that are never going to change and
Mm.
that yet allow us, that arc and that catharsis and that confrontation with certain human truths? And I think that religious theater, spiritual theater, slash ritual, thinking of Chud, there's an arc. There's a confrontation with profound human experience that leads to a broadening of what's possible, and ultimately may have very little to do with. I mean, it's almost like we want to give the responsibility and the kudos for creating this to some being beyond ourselves, when in
Mm.
fact it's actually deeply hardwired in our beings and in our physiology and in our genetics to long to open. So I
Mm.
don't know what all of that is to say. Ritual feels, many, many, many people have done it for a long, long time, and I can connect to that. Ceremony feels like, oh, we're creating this now, and it's following the same arc. And there are many places to experience it, and all of those places give opportunities for that experience of profound emotion, catharsis, connection, and awe.
Mm. So beautiful, Alta. I just so appreciate all of the different strands that you've brought in there. And, I'm like, particularly, I'm hearing this relationship between ceremony and ritual. And it's like there's something that every time a ritual is performed, and I want to use that word because the mention of theater is very relevant, I think, to ritual. It is a theater in a sense. And so there's this performance aspect. Everyone steps in to the experience of the ritual. They're performing a ritual. And then in that performance, there's a bringing it alive again for the people right here, right now. We're making it alive through being in it. And if that aspect isn't there, something's lost, something's missing, something's gone. It's not ritual in the way that you're speaking about it as being so quintessential to the human experience. Does that sound like what you experience when you go to the theater with your friends, or had in the church practice, or when you're in an African American lineage setting?
Yes.
Is that keeping them together? Is that the
Mhm.
thing, the connection that is
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, that enlivening aspect feels so critical. Because certainly, there are all kinds of experiences that are deadening and yet might be called ritual, right? But does it
Yeah,
make
a lot of people
possible?
nodding here. Yeah, enlivening. So if ritual can enliven that shared human connection and experience, then there's some sense that we're on track here. This is fulfilling a deep need or a function or some sense of shared meaning through experience.
Mhm.
That enlivening component is such an interesting thing because it's the undefinable aspect of the ritual. And the definable part is like the script, the story, the thing that doesn't change, and the miraculous, the magical part of it, the thing that makes it more than just the script, um, is that trick of getting everybody to fully engage. And so it feels like a lot of the early discussion of the resistance, all the ways we resist stepping in are the ways that block the enlivening process or whatever it is.
Yeah, I have a question about that, and it's related back to Alta, your experience at the theatre that you described. It's like you know what's going to happen. You know how this goes. And yet there's this enlivening, this emotional connection, this shared connection with the experience that keeps it alive. Like, what is that? Because every ritual that exists in repetition, we know how it's going to go, or somebody knows how it's going to go. What makes the difference?
Part of what popped up for me, and I wonder about it is, and I'm sitting with the enlivening versus deadening, that the spark is kind of the revelation or disclosure or exposure of authentic human vulnerability, tenderness, anger. I mean, okay, so sorry, King Lear. I recently watched Ran again, and an amazing, amazing film, and just, that selfish, self-centered, I'm in charge, I know what's happening. And then he's so vulnerable as you know, so there's something about that vulnerability. And by vulnerability, all I mean is it's like the raw beating heart of life that can show up in church. I mean, well, I mean, so much of Black American church is about the emotional, experience. So there's something there. And I'm also thinking about, there's a book out about studies about awe. I really have struggled with that book. And I don't know, there's something about the collective experience. And basically, he includes in there um, things that I think of as deadening, soldiers marching or something. I don't think that it's just the collective, that it's something about the tenderness that is also part of it, and connecting in tenderness. And yeah, in theater or spiritual space, maybe. That's today's thought.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly resonating for me. And there is something risky, or I kind of feel like there ought to be something a little risky in stepping into a structure. You are being vulnerable to do that, to step into a script, a structure, a known, like it's going to go like this with other people. If that vulnerability is lost, then maybe it becomes a little deadening. Oh, we're just going to do the thing. We know how this goes, and therefore we're not risky. There's something that maybe could happen there that detracts from that shared vulnerability. Yeah.
Alta, I just want to put some appreciation. Every time that you've spoken, it feels like you've said something about this conversation that I've felt like, oh, I'm really hoping somebody says this. Like the connections to theater, the connections to vulnerability, these are very essential parts of the way that I feel this works, and the way that I look at it. I feel like we walk around in human society just unavoidably hiding parts of ourselves from each other all the time. No matter how vulnerable we're willing to be with some people, there's just a sense if you don't know someone well enough, you don't know what level you should be exposing yourself to them. And so the function of theater before I was very into Tantra, and then the function of Tantric ritual for me have both been very similar in that you get to enter a space where you can explore uh, parts of human experience that you might never have exposed to anybody before in your life. And that's what was so powerful about Chud to me in particular was there were things that we explored, aspects of emotion, aspects of how we process certain things that I just have learned you do alone. Um, and for the first time in my life, other people saw me in this place, and it was absolutely transformative, absolutely earth-shattering to experience something like that. And I think that is where the power of ritual lies, is to be seen. Um, and then to know afterward that at the very least, this many people can see you this way and can allow you to see them in this way.
Fantastic. I love your energy, Elwyn.
Also a big yes here. Yeah.
I wonder, so that was your first chit experience, right, Elwyn?
Yeah.
Hmm. This is maybe an odd question, but I'm curious, how do you imagine that playing out over time? Supposing you were to step into chit practice again, and then again, and then again. What is that something you've thought about? Is it something you might do, you might consider?
Oh, I'm very interested in that. Yeah. Um, and I mean, part of what excites me is that I have a pretty hard time imagining what effect that would have on me. But one thing I've noticed just from doing it one time is that uh, it's easier that it feels as though people who have been around me enough since then have started to notice they can let their guard down about their emotions more. And I almost wonder if that like subconscious like micro expressive communication would just get even deeper with people. Like it's safe to be scared and it's safe to be intense around me. Um,
It's interesting here you talk about the emotions in connection to the chud practice as well. So I'm going off at a little bit of a tangent here, but you're talking about that reminded me of some of the experience that people who were on the recent chud retreat in New York, who were practicing in the group context for the second time after about some months distance from previously, had a same but different kind of experience. And one of the things that I remember in the people bringing in the integration session was the way that it became possible to experience the raw sensation of emotion, the emotional way of being, without it being connected to something having a particular meaning. So normally the way that we experience emotion is, oh, this thing happens and it means a certain thing and I react in this way. somebody dies, I experience loss, I am full of grief. And so we have this uh, sense that emotion is intrinsically connected to particular specific meaning, whereas actually as human beings, as Alta was saying, we have grief, we experience grief. It is an emotional sensation that is simply there in our experience, and we have clarity, we have anger, we as you know, the embodied makeup of how we are is that we can step into any of those, any any of those energetic experiences just like that. We don't need a trigger. It's simply always readily available. And one of the ways that the ritual functions is to give the experience of that being possible, such that our tight bundling of reaction response, we only behave this way in that circumstance and this way in another circumstance, all of that just disentangles, and the energetic experience of response, any sort of response, is available at any time. We can choose. There's much more choice there. And yeah, I can bring that energy. I just saw you doing that, Elwyn. Like, yeah, it's here. I can find it. It's right here, right now. There it is. That becomes much more available, I think. So maybe that's one way that the group ritual, and especially that chud ritual, functions. It seems to be panning out that way.
So we were just chatting a bit about the types of tantric ritual that you'll find in a traditional context, and then we thought it would be good to end this session by talking a little bit about how we're approaching it differently. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is that we really have spent a lot of time when we do the ritual talking about what it is, how it's supposed to work, the role of each, the function of each aspect, and make a big emphasis on personal autonomy, being like there's a choice to show up here, and there's a choice to leave, and that is equally important, which I think creates a little bit more of a genuine invitation rather than the social pressure to show up and step into something that you're not completely familiar with.
That was particularly important in the chud practice, and always will be in the group chud practice, that there are preliminaries, there are practice sessions that we engage with that very gradually introduce the nature of the ritual. Of course, the function of ritual in Tantra is always transformation. And so the question that we're constantly asking is, are we engaging with ritual in a group context such that transformation really is possible, like actually seriously is possible in the moment there and beyond that ritual? And that is so important and core to the nature of the engagement, that yeah, like you say, that in order for that to be in place, it also has to be somewhat challenging. People have to be feeling it as something of a risk, I think. And therefore, it's equally important that there's this real choice to step out and not be a part of it. When that is apparent, like, for example, in the chud ritual, somebody getting up, and we will have this always available to say, yeah, I don't think I'm going to continue from here. I'll sit outside the door and make sure that everything's fine outside, or whatever. That makes it possible for anybody in the room to say, yeah, no, I don't want to do this time, and that's totally fine. So having that aspect constantly available and seen by others is really important.
Yeah, I know when we were doing the chode, I remember you and I chatting because yeah, as we had these preparation sessions, and each one we kind of set those like, and you can exit here, and you can, if you could stick around, and and for most of those early sessions, people were still choosing to show up, and then when somebody actually said, okay, I don't think I want to do the full ritual, we're like, oh, thank God, because the moment that somebody actually says that and chooses to do it, and it's becomes very clear to the group that this is encouraged, this type of exercise of personal autonomy, then those implicit social pressures that we're also familiar with in group contexts, I think it kind of breaks them up a little bit. It cuts through some of that, shows it as a genuine possibility.
And it emphasizes the choice aspect of being there. If it's really obvious that, well, some people are choosing not to be here and that's fine, then it becomes more apparent that by being here, I am choosing.
Yeah.
So that can be helpful. Yeah. So we're at time for this month's discussion. That was wonderful. Thank you, everybody, once again. I'm always so bowled over and appreciative of all of the different perspectives that you bring here and your willingness to share experiences, share thinking aloud, all of that. Thank you.
See you next time.
Next time. Bye bye.